Okay, so long and short of it, I've been watching a video on someone else critiquing another person's life, experienced and otherwise. And in doing so, it's given me perspective and insights that I think are necessary for my own personal growth. It's made me think about things that ultimately I do want to talk about. Because on one hand, yeah, I'm not exactly thrilled or excited about the idea of the dense dork being a part of my life again, and I'm pretty sure that their issues aside, they'd probably feel the same way. And yet, at the same time, trying to not let myself be pulled away from the thoughts I was clinging through to into memories. The past remains as the past. It is not the present moment. I may be judgmental, hypercritical, and otherwise of myself and others, but that does not mean others need to deal with it, or have it be inflicted upon them pointlessly. By all means, that's not healthy. I want to improve the strength of this connection between the space that's trying to shut me down and swallow my mind until I just become a ranting, raving, unhealthy ball of chaos that blames others, and the space where I can be a reasonable and decent person who actually respects and understands other people's situations, perspectives, and emotional experiences without dismissing or invalidating my own. Because if I don't have that line between the two, then I am going to end up, if I can't strengthen that line between the two, then I'm not going to be able to help other people walk that line either. I'm not going to be able to help other people crawl their way out of the darkness, out of the absence that life has burdened them with. The pressure of nothingness, the pressure of an absence is heavier sometimes than the pressure of a substance. Listen, look, brain, don't tangent, please. Not right now. So in my latest daily video recordings, daily sky recordings, I expressed a level of disgust towards the dense dork simply because they were not willing to try and meet me on my terms when I tried my damn best to meet them on their terms. I didn't very well succeed. At the same time, I'm kind of glad I didn't succeed. It would have been hurting me more in the long run than helping them at all. The disgust I expressed was not an inherent part of who they are. It wasn't their value as a person. That much I know for certain. Their value as a person is separate from the disgust I have for their actions, just like how my value as a person is separate from the disgust they have towards my actions, and how perception on both people's case plays a part in the dynamics of things. Because on my hand, I accepted a prediction as a foregone conclusion, both physically and subconsciously, and thus ended up accidentally putting blinders on and panicking because of, well, accidentally panicking and then putting blinders on because I was panicking towards a certain route of possibilities. But I don't want to let that happen again. It shouldn't have happened in the first place by my hypercritical standards. By my non-hypercritical standards, it's understandable why it happened. I want to make a distinction between my hypercriticality and my reasonableness. Because the two things exist in relation to each other, but they are not the same thing. They conflict with each other in many different ways. It's at that conflict where I'm learning how to hold a mid space for the things I don't understand alongside the things I do. Because all things considered, if I'm even a fragment of a second right about that dense dork's issues, then every attempt by me to communicate has only scared the fuck out of them and reminded of that past emotional experience. Thus, their reactions are emotionally reasonable, even if they are not socially reasonable from their perspective. I don't want shame building up on their end, and I don't want shame building up on my end, just because we don't understand each other. That would ruin the whole point of trying to grow. To inflict unhealthy shame on another person from trying to grow, from trying to acknowledge things I don't know, I wouldn't be able to live with that. It's why I'm emotionally still processing things and not completely done with the whole situation. At the same time, though, I have made progress towards moving on and living my own life again, just like how they've had space and time to do so for a while now. Is something I wrote in response to the video that prompted me to make this recording is something I think that is a key reference point in the dynamics of messy situations like this. When one provides valid logical criticisms, in providing valid logical criticisms only, you can unintentionally dismiss and invalidate someone else's emotional experience and perspective. And on the flip side, in providing valid emotional support, you can unintentionally be painting yourself as a defender of someone else's actions and impacts when you don't condone them at all. And so black and white thinking cannot be used as a reliable tool for navigating through messy situations. Just like gray and colorful thinking cannot be a reliable tool for navigating through messy situations. You need both in order to get even the start of a lens of clarity. And then you've got to realize, okay, when am I seeing things from a perspective where I don't understand stuff, and when am I seeing things from a perspective where I think or feel like I really understand this, what's going on, and can connect in a way that allows me to take actions that help to resolve the situation for the better without causing massive harm to those involved. That's how I got to the concept of a sphere, an orb of navigation, three-dimensional, used as a projection of where you're at within your own mind relative to other spaces, with each space being aligned on the sphere as if they were the faces of a die, but following the curvature so as to provide dynamic overlaps and contrasting territories. Then, in taking a lesson from yin and yang as a concept, you take the territories that are opposite of each other, and on the everything makes sense side, you keep them the same. But on the everything doesn't make sense and I'm missing something here side, you rotate it 180. And that's how people get stuck in territories that have helped them so far, but are ultimately blinding them in the long run when they choose to just trust them because it's worked well enough in the past. If you doubt your tools, you have the chance of trying to make a new one. But if you trust your tools, you'll have a chance of discovering which one works in any given situation. Both are useful dynamics, and both are necessary. It's not just one or the other. The timing of that is really the nuanced part, because in some moments, it's like a sine wave. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. But in other moments, it's like an MP3 where the spikes and valleys are just arranged so confusingly as to make sense when viewed as a whole. But when you look at when you're in the midst of it, it doesn't make sense at all. Ah, I don't hate that dense stork, and I can't say I'm disgusted with them or by them. I am disgusted at the fact that I'm disgusted at the idea that I put in so much effort, and from my perspective, I'm not getting much of anything out of it. That's the point at which I choose to walk away. In which I choose to finally just, okay, I don't give a shit anymore, stop self-containing, start just being. Because that's the whole reason why I was willing to say that I was willing to verbally entertain the idea of miswriting a character relative to them within my own fictional lore inaccurately just to piss them off. Because I've had that idea for a while. I've had it for an entire year now. But it wasn't something I wanted to do. And now that I'm moving on, I know it's something I won't do. So I'm able to say it and enjoy saying it because I know it's not anchored to me anymore. It's definitely an emotional space I've been in. It's an emotional space I can definitely enjoy the idea of. But it's not an emotional space I want to take action on. Because that just furthers the cycle. that just furthers the toxic and unhealthy dynamic between two equally confused and frustrated people. Or maybe even unequally, whatever the fuck. I know that if I ever interact with that person ever again directly, I'm personally, I can verify for myself. I can't verify for the other person, but I can verify for myself that it's going to be uncomfortable, scary, definitely a little terrifying. If it wasn't terrifying for me, I'd be worried about my apathy blinding me to my ego. But then again, sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you're just present in the moment and you're in a moment where you authentically just don't care. The idea that you can switch between different moods and states of mind as moments slide into each other, flow between each other, is ultimately a necessary understanding in terms of self-growth and healing. Otherwise, you won't recognize the dance as a dance. You'll see it as, oh, I made a step forward. Oh, I made a step backward. Ah, shit, I'm sliding backwards. Oh, I feel great today. This must be final. And it's like, no, that's just where you're at in the dance. That's where your mind is with processing and working through it all. Each day is a new experience, made up of smaller moments of experience that can have their own impacts. It's dynamic, not stagnant, just like the rest of life. I want to see more of life. I want to see people being themselves even if I don't understand or connect with them. I want to see people being able to live their lives without feeling like they need to enforce their way of life upon another. And right now, I don't see a lot of that. I see, hell, I've been part of the problem, and I'm still working on trying to make sure I'm not eternally part of the problem. Because they cared. I know they cared, and I know they tried their best relative to what they knew or understood. And if they didn't, that's for them to live with and not for me to fucking worry about. If I get caught up in revenge, it's not going to fucking matter. Hell, the whole point of twisting my spite into itself to use kindness as a form of revenge back when I was still clawing and struggling my way out of fucking being having a mental breakdown and turning into a horrible person was exactly to give myself a footing on which I could make my own choices and decisions and keep to my resolve to not be a problem in someone else's life. Because I don't want that. Enough fucking there are enough fucking Ottomans of chaos around living in the world around us simply because the world around us has decayed to such a point. If we can't learn to balance growth and decay as a society to the point where we can recover from downward trends long after they're over, then I think this planet is going to have a lot of quiet apocalypses. Quiet ends of the world. One of the things I'm still confused and feeling weird about is the idea that I'm more emotionally mature than them, but they're more practically mature than me. Because they can go out and function in the world in ways I can't. And I can process this stuff emotionally in ways they can't, as far as I know. And so it's like, in some regards, I'm an adult, but also still a child, and the very much is same for them in the inverse. So finding a way to respect where they're at, while also making space for myself, is still vitally important, no matter if I feel I've moved on or not. Because trauma doesn't care. Trauma is just, okay, now. When's it gonna show up again next? Now! Now! Oh no, it's gonna show up again. And then it's completely silent for like a month before it shows up again. Trauma does not care about consistency, it cares about the moment. Neat. And this is... This is something I really don't know how to feel about, so I'm not sure I'm even going to be able to put it into words. That doesn't mean I'm not going to try, it just means don't expect a full thesis here. In terms of emotional responsibility, it's on me to move on and make sure I don't stay attached to them, because part of me has already accepted ahead of time and through many repeated experiences, mind you, that the other person isn't going to be open to communication or working through this together as friends until long after I'm done with it. It's just how they function. It's not something that they necessarily have control over yet. And if they do have control over it, then by damn, you are disappointing me to the next level. And there's my spite poking in again when I really don't want it to, because on one hand, yes, shame has a healthy function when faced properly. But poking at existing shame is not a way to get someone to deal with it. That does the exact opposite. It just makes them more likely to run away from it. And I know this, but emotionally, part of me doesn't want to accept it, and I don't like that. The rest of me has already accepted it, so why the fuck can't this one part of me accept it? Now, the entire situation may be my favorite bone to chew on in terms of contemplating life and exploring dynamics so as to function in chewing on it as a learning lesson and an opportunity for future learning lessons. At the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean me publicly talking about it is going to help. And that's where I think I'm at emotionally still very conflicted, because on one hand, I want to feel heard. I want to transcribe my own perspective and experience down into a story format that doesn't just preach the emotional truth of my perspective, but acknowledges the reality of things and what I understand of other people's perspectives alongside my own, as a way to both be heard, help create opportunities for others to grow, and make sure that I'm not dismissed. At the same time, if that dense stork is watching my videos, then that means they're choosing to stay entangled by doing so, and their emotional child might not realize how it's setting up the logical adult for future shame and or confusion. Meanwhile, it's the logical child in me that accidentally sets up the emotional child in me for future shame and confusion. So I know for certain that I get mischievous and resort to mischief territory more the more I'm stressed. I'm pretty sure a lot of people do that. And if logically they weren't looking up to me, but emotionally they were, then the emotional part may have internalized something that ultimately functions as a defense and or safety mechanism that they know can drive me away, just like how I know flirting with them or trying to get their attention can drive them away. Allow them to escape from the fear long enough to feel safe so that way they can then start emotionally processing things. And all of this hinges on the idea that they are emotionally avoidant in the ways I'm not, and I'm emotionally anxious in the ways they're not. At least not. Oh, it's. The tetrahedron of dynamics, where one line is related purely to me, another line is related purely to them, and then the rest of the lines connect with between the ends of either line to create the flowing dynamic that keeps moving despite my best effort. I've taken a bite out of it, but I haven't stopped it. Especially if I'm talking about it again. At the same time, no, that's another tangent. Uh, meditation is a method for the subconscious to interact with the conscious and fill in the gaps of what isn't to provide dynamic opportunities for growth. Maybe. Ugh. Because the traditional definition of the healthy person is someone who accepts that everything's okay when no one's yelling. Meanwhile, the traditional definition of an unhealthy person is everything's okay when people are yelling. And to hold both in contrast to each other in order to find out what the other dynamic reference points available are is how one can learn to better navigate. But that's no easy feat because the brain likes to save on energy, and so it tries to compact nuances down to their simplest form, and oftentimes fails to do it, fails to stop before it loses some of the meaning. Thus, you have to relearn lessons all over again. Whoops. I think I may have woken my mom up. Sorry, Mom. Ugh. Oh. Oh, let's not even get into the delusion that each person. Oh. No! 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 Not getting into that. Not now. That stretches my sanity. It's already stretched enough as is. You need to give it a break so as to recover, otherwise it's going to have a tear in it like a muscle. Oh god, that's a terrifying idea. Sanity isn't just a rubber band, it's a muscle. Okay. So ultimately, this all leads back to the sanctuary and or tolerance paradox, wherein creating a safe place for others to where they feel heard and seen is a necessary part of growth, but in making that safe space and then allowing for some things and not others, you can create dynamics that further to the chaos outside. So if you can learn to internalize the outside chaos and be a force of safety and rest for those around you, you have a bigger impact because of that. However, you do need to do this consciously, not subconsciously, because the subconscious will just write what it sees on the surface. because it only knows what it knows. The consciousness can compare angles and consistencies to see where things line up and thus make more accurate more accurate perspectives on the actual structure of things as opposed to what the surface implies alone. Mm, I really shouldn't be feeding myself sugar for staying up later and contemplating deep things again. Damn it. I'm gonna go grab a snack. Alright, so one ice cream sandwich later, and I should have brought up some goldfish to snack on, because that would at least be something more than an ice cream fucking sandwich. And there's barely any water. I will be right back. And that's another thing that I think messes with me mentally is the fact that just because I don't ever expect them to actually surprise me doesn't mean they can't. Doesn't mean they can't prove me wrong. It's just I'm not seeing much of anything, and so I have no fucking clue. Uh, this is what I mean when I said that I can keep their concept around as a muse at minimum. Because ultimately, in considering someone whose dynamics are so different to mine, I get new insights from how my own dynamics and their dynamics clash with each other. At the same time, that doesn't mean that either person is healthy for the other. Especially if one isn't, especially if, let's try to finish that sentence in our head before we speak. Excuse me. And I've lost my room of thought. Shit. Use dynamics. Toxicity. There we go. Just be just because I can use them as a reference point to further my own learning and growth doesn't necessarily mean that either person is healthy for the other, because the pace and the direction that they want to live their life is by all means probably very much the opposite of where I want to live mine. And yet, the other person is able to do things that I can't, that I want to be able to do, without having, without, oh, the areas in which I would like to see them make some effort are easier for me than they are for them. And the areas in which they would like to see me make some effort are easier for them than they are for me. Which is what makes this entire situation so fucking frustrating. I drank sanity. Oh. Ultimately, though, I can't keep showing up for them in the areas I struggle with if they're not willing to show up for me in the areas they struggle with. And that's that's unreasonable. It's unreasonable if they don't care about me. It's unreasonable for me to ask that of someone who, though I think I know, I barely know anything of. I understand my perspective on who they are, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the conclusions I have about them are going to be real. Just like how the conclusions they've had about me, that doesn't necessarily mean their conclusions about me are going to be real to who I am. We're both just looking at a simulacrum of someone else's concept and trying to understand the things that we don't. Trying to navigate for ourselves while respecting the other person. That's me hoping for the best. If I really am just the only fool in this equation, then I can't afford to socially care about them when I don't know if they are willing to socially care about me. That's a fact. No matter how the emotional space may want to redirect and reorganize it. Which is why I've put all of my effort into letting go in what ways that I can and working towards future ways of letting go. So that way, things don't stay the same. Even if, even if they never like me like that. I can at least say I can at least say that even if they don't ever return my feelings or like me like that, I can at least say that I lived for and made the decisions that I can live with. Things that aren't going to haunt me. They weren't the best decisions. They weren't decisions that I feel flawless about. No, they were decisions that were rough and messy, impulsive and reckless. But they're still decisions I'm glad I made in terms of trying to do the right thing. I'll forever regret the negative impact. Let's not forget that. But I'm not going to regret my decisions. Whoever the fuck listens to this, hope it helps you in your own journey.